It is probably the most famous rock in the whole world, but it helped people understand a language that to them just seemed like a collection of pictures and strange diagrams. The Rosetta Stone today is locked up behind bulletproof glass within the British Museum, and every year millions of visitors flock through the doors to see one of the most important artefacts of the ancient world. The stone isn't complete, it's actually broken, meaning it was part of something even bigger. It was once in the hands of Napoleon, but today lies in the hands of one of his enemies. But what does the Rosetta Stone actually say? And why does it generate so much controversy despite being over 2,000 years old? It was French forces under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte who discovered the Rosetta Stone. He was campaigning militarily inside of Egypt from 1798 to 1801, and his plan was to conquer much of the eastern Mediterranean and to then create a collection of colonies that could be viewed by the British as a threat to the jewel in their empire, India. Napoleon knew of the riches he would find in these areas, but it was allegedly in 1799 that a large stone with carvings on it was discovered, allegedly by accident. It is not 100% known with certainty what happened when the stone was discovered. One story is that the French were digging the foundations in the region of a town named Rashid, later known as Rosetta, in the Nile Delta, to extend a fort when they came across the large stone. It was then claimed that the stone had been built into an old wall, an ancient wall. The man who was in charge of the work, Pierre-François Bouchard, knew what they found was important. He had the stone cleaned before it was taken to Cairo for a closer investigation. Discovered immediately was the fact that on the stone there were 3 different inscriptions, 3 different languages, which were all of course incredibly different. One of the languages was Egyptian hieroglyphics, another was classical Greek, and the third was identified later on as Demotic, a more informal everyday Egyptian script of writing. It was believed that the inscriptions all said the same thing, almost like today's signs in some places have translations in other languages underneath. The Rosetta Stone offered the chance for people to decrypt a language which had never been understood before, Egyptian hieroglyphics. When temples were discovered and raided and tombs were attacked, a huge amount of riches had been found and taken from Egypt, but no one knew anything about the people of Egypt because, quite frankly, no one could understand the language plastered in scripts, scrolls and all over the architecture. When Napoleon was defeated, the stone fell into the hands of the British and became their property when the Treaty of Alexandria was signed. The Rosetta Stone was then shipped to England and it arrived coming through the port of Portsmouth in February 1802. Hieroglyphics had gone out of use in around the 4th century AD and no one knew what they meant and the stories they told, but using the Greek inscriptions on the stone, a language which had remained and was in use, scholars began to work to translate hieroglyphics for the very first time. The Greek was the real key to unlocking the code, and a young English physician was one of the first people to discover that the Rosetta Stone related to a royal, Ptolemy. A French scholar, Jean-François Champollion, worked out that the hieroglyphics were related to the sound of the Egyptian language, and this was an important part in understanding ancient Egyptian writings, and he worked out that they were used to write names of rulers. There were many people working on the stone at the time, and Champollion published a paper saying that the alphabetical signs were not just used for foreign names, but also for Egyptian names too. Now, the thing you've all been waiting for. You might think that this may have been a hugely significant message carved onto the stone. Maybe it was an act of war. Maybe it was a royal wedding certificate. Nope. It was a decree passed by a group of local priests just talking about taxes. It was one of a number of mass-produced stelae designed to tell people about an agreement issued in 196 BC. It stated about all the good things that Ptolemy V, who was the king of Egypt from 204 BC to 180 BC, and tells of the religious honours pledged to him by the priests. One quote directly from the stone states, "Under his reign, and as regards to sums which were due to the royal house from the people of Egypt, as in taxes, and likewise those which were due from everyone who was in his august service, his majesty remitted them altogether, how so great they were, and he hath forgiven the prisoners who were in prison. and ordered that every one among them should be released from the punishment which they had to undergo. And his Majesty made an order saying, in respect of the things which are to be given to the gods, and the money and the grain which are to be given to the temples each year, and all the things which are to be given to the gods from the vineyards and from the cornlands of the nome, all the things which were then due under the majesty of his holy father. The stone confirmed that there was a royal court of Ptolemy V, and it would have been displayed in most temples and other sites across the land. It was the equivalent to a poster in theory, obviously written in the languages which were used at the time, so everyone could read about the great things that the king had done. The Rosetta Stone has been on display inside the British Museum since 1802, and it was only taken off display during the First World War, when the museum were worried about heavy bombing, and it was actually moved for 2 years inside of the postal tube station underground in Holborn, which is really close to where the museum is. But it has also taught us so much more about ancient Egypt. We know that Demotic was the day-to-day language that was used, but that hieroglyphics became a more ancient and royal language. On the stone are also a number of cartouches, names surrounded by a circle. These parts were used to help decipher the stone to begin with, and the cartouches represented the name of a royal or divine figure. As with many things found inside the British Museum, the Rosetta Stone still generates a lot of controversy today. It was discovered because of an act of warfare, then taken from the French in an act of warfare, and some believe it was discovered with the close link to the world domination by the French and the British, and that it was stolen from the Egyptians. Some have called for it to be returned to Cairo, where it can be displayed there, as everything gathered from it has pretty much already been learned about, and today it would hold much more cultural value for the Egyptians than it currently does inside of a glass case in London. But still today, when you visit the British Museum, it's one of the artefacts you have practically to fight your way through people to see. It's always surrounded by a sea of people, similarly to the Mona Lisa in the Louvre Gallery in Paris, and it is one of the most important artefacts that have helped the world learn about a culture that itself captivates. This has been History of the World, and I hope you've learned something new. If you have, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.